வெல்கம் ஃபோக்ஸ். இது இன்னொரு நிகழ்ச்சி, தமிழ் சுவையோட இன்னொரு ஷார்ட் அண்ட் ஸ்வீட் நிகழ்ச்சி. இன்னைக்கு கார்த்தல பார்த்தீங்கன்னாக்க குருச்சரன் சிக்கல் குருச்சரன் அவர்களோட ஒரு கலைமாமணி விருதை பத்தி நம்ம பேசணும். இன்னைக்கு இன்னொரு பெரிய ஃபண்டாஸ்டிக் பர்சனோட நம்ம பேச இருக்கோம். நம்ம இந்தியாவோட சுதந்திர போராட்டம் பத்தி பேசணும்னாக்க மணிக்கணக்கா பேசிட்டு இருக்கலாம். எவ்வளவு வீரர்கள், எவ்வளவு தியாகிகள் நம்ம நாட்டுக்காக எவ்வளவு போராடினார்கள்னு தெரியும். ஆனா நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் ஒரே ஒரு முகம் தான் நம்மளுக்கு நல்லா டிஸ்டிங்டா ஞாபகம் வருது. நிறைய பேர் இருக்காங்க. காமராஜரா இருக்கட்டும், ராஜாஜியா இருக்கட்டும். ஆனா ஒரு பேர் மற்றும் பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஒரு வெரி வெல் ரவுண்டட் பேர். இவர் விடுதலை போராட்டம் ஒன்று இல்லாம பெண் உரிமை பத்தி, அதே டைம் எல்லா ஜாதி மதம் பேதமின்றி எல்லாமே ஒண்ணுதான். அதை பத்தி பேசினாக்க அவரோட பர்சனாலிட்டியே தனி. அவர் நடை என்ன, பாவனை என்ன, அவர் போடுற அவர் கோட் என்ன, ஒரு நடை என்ன, அவர் மீசை என்ன, அது ஃபண்டாஸ்டிக். ஒரு கிரேஸ் என்ன, அவரோட கம்பீரம் என்ன, அது இவ்வளவு சொல்லியும் உங்களுக்கு யாருன்னு தெரியலனாக்க நீங்க தமிழரா இருக்கிறதே நீங்க கொஞ்சம் யோசிக்கணும். யாருன்னு தெரியணும். நீங்க யூ ஹேவ் டு சேலஞ்ச் யுவர்செல்ஃப். யாரும் புரட்டி பாருங்க. இது வேற யாரும் இல்ல, நம்ம மகாகவி பாரதி அவர்கள். மகாகவி பாரதி எவ்வளவுதான் அவர் வெறும் எழுத்தாளர் மற்றும் ஒரு போயட், நிறைய புக்ஸ் எழுதியிருக்கார். நிறைய பேருக்கு தெரியாது எவ்வளவு நிறைய. அவர் இருந்த காலம் ரொம்ப குறைவுதான். எனக்கு அந்த குறைந்த காலத்திலேயே எவ்வளவு பாஷைகள் கத்துட்டு இருக்காரு, எவ்வளவு கவிதை எழுதியிருக்காரு, எவ்வளவு தேசத்துக்காக எவ்வளவு தடவை ஜெயிலுக்கு போயிருக்கார், எவ்வளவு பாஷைகள் கத்துட்டு இருக்காரு. தன்னை குடும்பத்தை சிஸ்டர் நிவேதிதா கிட்ட போய் முதல்ல அறிமுகமானதுல என்ன தெரிஞ்சது, அவர் பெண்களுக்கு, தமிழ்நாட்டு பெண்கள் எவ்வளவு வீட்டுக்குள்ளே அடைஞ்சு கிடக்காங்க, நான் இன்னும் பெண்களுக்கு, என் வீட்டு பெண்களுக்கு நான் எப்படி சுதந்திரம் கொடுக்கணும், அவங்களுக்கு பேச்சு திறமை என்ன சொல்லிக் கொடுக்கணும், வெளியில போராடணும். அதே தமிழ்நாட்டு பெண்களுக்கு, இந்திய பெண்களுக்கு எவ்வளவு போராடணும், அது மாதிரிலாம் நிறைய சொல்லிக் கொடுத்தார். ஐம் சோ ஆனர்ட். இன்னைக்கு பாரதியார் ஒரு லீனியேஜ்ல, அவங்களோட ஆன்செஸ்ட்ரல் லெவல்ல அவங்க கொள்ளு பேத்தி நம்மளோட பேச இருக்கிறாங்க. மீரா சுந்தர ராஜன். ஐ எம் ஜஸ்ட் சோ ஆனர்ட். மீரா சுந்தர ராஜன் நம்மளுக்கு இந்த வாட்டி 3வது தடவை நம்ம ஷோக்கு வந்திருக்காங்க. ஒரு 2 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி நான் முதல்ல நான் சந்தித்தேன். அவங்கள தாயாரோடையும். எனக்கு ரொம்ப ஐ ஃபீல் வெரி லக்கி டு ஹேவ் ரப் ஷோல்டர்ஸ் வித் ஹர். அதுக்கப்புறம் முதல்ல மீட் பண்ணாட்டும், அதுக்கப்புறம் 2வது வாட்டி, 3வது ரொம்ப ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் ஆகிட்டோம். ரொம்ப ஸ்னேக், ரொம்ப சிஸ்டர்ஹுட் மாதிரியே நாங்கள் 2 பேரும் பழகிட்டு இருக்கோம். நாங்கள் 2 பேரும் ஐ எம் வெரி ஆனர் டு ஹேவ் ஹர் ஆன் அவர் ஷோ. வெல்கம் டு த ஷோ. வெல்கம் டு தமிழ் சுவை. மீரா சுந்தரராஜன், எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? ஹவ் ஆர் யூ டூயிங்?
Thank you. I'm doing okay. Thank you so much. How are you, Sudha?
Doing very well. Mira, yeah, just I have a few. I wanted to talk a few things about your background itself. Mira, she is not. அவங்க பிறந்ததெல்லாம் outside of India, Britainல
Yes.
She is a lawyer.
Canada.
Oh, okay. Lawyer by profession. At the same time, she did her. You can maybe talk about your professional career, etc.
Gladly. So my profession, or one of them at least, is actually as a law professor. So I don't practice as a lawyer, but I'm trained as a legal scholar. So I teach in law school, among other settings.
Nice.
And then, of course, given my lineage, it'll come as no surprise to anyone that I'm involved in writing myself and in music. And so I sort of have 3 horses that I'm riding in my life, which is fine.
Very good. So நான் உங்களோட LinkedIn profile பார்த்தேன். You have an amazing lot of things going on in your life. You have a University of Oxford, a DPhil. You have an intellectual property law. You have done it.
Yeah.
And experience பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், you are a visiting professor currently in UC Davis School of Law, and prior to that, honorary member at the Magdalen College, University of Oxford, and professor of intellectual property law at Glasgow University Law School, and visiting scholar at Stanford. I mean, all of them are top-notch colleges, for sure. And what can we expect anything less from Subramani Bharati's great granddaughter, I should say, right? Fantastic. Very honored to have you, Mira Sundara Rajan. Could you tell us a little bit more about your personal life? In the sense, you have been I know you have not met your great grandfather, but from what you have learned from your great grandmother or inherited the stories from your great grandmother, your grandmother, and your mother about the lives and the habits and likes and dislikes of his eccentricities, or I should say about Subramani Bharati. Can you share a few incidences that has been passed along from generation to generation? That'd be interesting to know that the world has not seen.
Well, that's a tall order because so much is known about his life, both true stories and stories that are a little bit more legendary in nature.
Right.
That is natural that a legend has developed after his death and so on. But maybe I can focus on his interest in promoting women's status,
Right.
because so my mother's grandfather is who Subramaniam Bharati was. And so you're absolutely right to identify that parambare, starting with my great grandmother. So she's the one who really kept the memory of Bharati as a person alive in the family and passed along all her knowledge about him as well as his work, to her daughters, and then also to her granddaughter. My mom was brought up by Chellama Bharati and Thangamar Bharati. She lived with both the poet's wife and daughter. So she learned all of that. And then, of course, she made me aware of those things as well. So it's a very interesting thing because everyone knows about Bharati's belief that women should be prominent in society. But not everyone may realize that he believed women's equality starts in the home. And so he wrote about that actually just in this book that I had beside me here. I'm
Mm.
about to publish a new edition of Bharati's English writings, and he writes about that in one of his essays.
Mm.
And he says, before a woman can come outside, we have to remember that she is living a life at home. She is a daughter, she is a wife, she is a mother, and so on at home. And unless and until there is equality in the home, we cannot expect that there will be equality in the society. And so, in his own family life, he actually encouraged the women to come up and take a prominent position in running the house. And so, imagine this was in the days when, my great grandmother was married to him at the age of 7,
Oh my.
and those were the days when that's how things were done, and that was totally normal in the society. So, coming from such a background, when they lived in Pondicherry, he used to get his wife and his daughters also to welcome the guests coming to the house. They would be the ones who would give the guests water to wash their feet and make them comfortable in the house. And this was unheard of in those days,
Mm.
because women used to be in the back of the house. They weren't really supposed to be seen by visitors,
Right.
especially men,
Yeah.
his male disciples and friends coming to visit, prominent people coming to visit. I understand Rajaji was one of the guests who came and saw
Mhm.
Chellama Bharati. Definitely, she cooked for him and so on, and he's written about that.
Mm.
Also, in the same book, you can find an explanation
Okay.
of that in
Can you
Raja.
show that book again? Just a cover,
Yeah,
or does
sure.
it look borrowed?
Unfortunately, this is a very old book, which is why I have it in this binding.
Okay.
This is the previous publication of Bharati's English writing. So this is based on a 1937 publication
Oh
of
my.
his writings, which was reprinted with some changes, minor changes and additions in 1980,
Ah,
actually in time for the poet's birth centenary, so 1882 to 1982.
okay.
Uh, and since then, those works have not been published. So now I'm planning a new book is actually going to be published by Penguin Classics.
Very nice.
And I think that's a fitting tribute to Bhartia
Absolutely.
and reflects his status that
Absolutely.
Penguin Classics is now going to be publishing his English writing.
Very nice. I'm
But
so
yeah,
good. So good.
to
I'm
answer your
glad that we have a platform here to talk about that. Wonderful.
yes,
Wonderful.
absolutely. Thanks to your efforts, very
Sure.
much so.
My pleasure is all mine. As you rightly said, Bharat, last week or the week before show, when we started talking about Women's International Day and March being the Women History Month, uh, I was telling the audience that the concept of equality of women was first envisioned by none other than Subramani Bharati in Tamil Nadu. Nobody else even thought about it. They were only talking about men being the forefront, fighting for freedom, men being doing this, women always being behind doors, cooking and cleaning and doing it. Women did not have any role in participating, at least as far as Tamil Nadu was concerned, did not have any role in playing in politics or freedom, fighting for freedom or anything else. Bharati definitely had the biggest role. I mean, everything in coming up, talking about education, talking about dowry, talking about equal rights, everything else. He had his voice loud and clear. And I'm so glad that he wrote poems, he wrote literature, books, and it has been not, and that is the best way to document it, his thoughts, and that has been passed on. And now we are rewriting it, you're revising it, you're polishing it, and giving it a new image that is the new incarnation. That is, I'm so happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the very idea. In fact, you captured it exactly, Sudha. You know, the idea is that we are preserving this literature for the present and future
Right,
generations.
right.
And, you know, now when we're talking about Bharati, this year is the 100th anniversary of his death. And 100 years is a long time. So when we're looking back at what he wrote then, you know, especially in English, it's the language of that time, it's the conventions of that time, the expression. So there is a kind of a barrier for the current reader. You know, I can say that quite clearly in being able to read a lot of that writing. So when we have this opportunity, we're able to make it edited for the modern reader, presented in a format where it's given the respect and the place that it deserves,
Yeah.
then the modern reader is in a very good position to see it in the right context and really be able to hear the voice of the poet speaking loud and clear, as
Yeah.
you say, on this and on so many other issues. So it's a wonderful privilege for me to be able to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. A couple of things stood out as you were talking that sentence. For a person to be remembered and spoken about, and for his works to be remembered after 100 years, and still being relevant for this till this date, and maybe even another 100 years or 200 years, is unheard of. It is just unheard of. I was speaking to Sickle Gurucharan this morning, and he's a fantastic singer who's just won a Kalaimamani award from the government of Tamil Nadu. He was also speaking about Bharatiyar and says his works, Bharatiyar's works are timeless. I mean, timeless gems that over and over again, the more you read, there are different interpretations of it. And we still have come a long way for women's emancipation, but there's still a long way. But Bharati's songs and works have captured every one of them so well. And uh, secondly, what I was remembering is for those times, Bharati was not only fluent in English, but I was told that he was very fluent in French and four or five other languages. Is that right? French and
Yeah, absolutely. To my knowledge, he was, of course, there's Tamil, but then he's very fluent in Hindi because he had studied in Benares. And so he spoke and read and I'm sure wrote Hindi like a native. He wrote in Sanskrit as well, studied Sanskrit. There's a beautiful Sanskrit poem called Buloha Kumari, which he has written, which, you know, he also has a way of singing it that the family sings. And he knew French as well because he lived in Pondicherry. And I believe he knew some Bengali also
Yeah.
due to close association with Sri Aurobindo and other Bengalis. And of course, that language is relatively closer to Hindi.
Yes.
And yeah, he was a great linguist, no doubt about that. And his English is very fluent.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to read his English works in its original form.
You
I'm just
must.
curious. Yeah.
So it'll be a wonderful experience. And I
Yeah.
hope that you and anyone listening to this program takes an interest because we're very, very excited about that book.
Sure. So this interview, I had invited you, Mira, to talk mainly, of course, you being a great granddaughter of Bharati brings in a very special angle, and more so because Bharati was one of the visionaries of women's freedom, women's equality of rights, and everything else. And you have also been a lawyer by profession, although whether you're practicing law or teaching law in whatever form. There have been a lot of female lawyers, especially in the US, and most of them holding, at least if you look at Michelle Obama, you look at Hillary Clinton, you look at Vice President Kamala Harris, everybody you see holding big positions have had some kind of a law background or the other. And I'm trying to see if you have any specific female role models in your life that have influenced you into going into law, or was that something that you have been having in your childhood for a long time? Or in general, do you have any female role models that you have been drawing inspiration from day in and day out?
Yeah, I definitely have female role models. I think in terms of my law studies, I was not primarily motivated by a female role model. If anything, I probably had my great grandfather as the main inspiration for doing that.
Ah,
Because he wrote the famous poem called Pudumai Pen,
yes.
where among other things, he talks about the Chattangal and he talks about the woman will be the one who becomes a lawmaker. So
Okay.
perhaps I had some fascination stemming from that poem from childhood.
Good, very good.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, but what I can tell you for sure is that my mother has been absolutely the most important role model in my life. And for her, the great priority in her life was female education. And so, but she herself did not originate that idea. That idea came from her grandmother. So,
Okay.
Chellamma Bharati, so my great grandmother.
Okay.
And it's quite a tragic story in a way because, the family didn't enjoy a lot of material prosperity. And my great grandmother died when my mom was about 16 years old. And
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
yeah, and my mom used to say, she used to tell how when Chellamma was ill towards the end of her life, she was back in her home village of Kadayam, and she would actually call out to the neighbors and ask them, who is going to educate these children?
Oh, my
So
goodness.
such a moving, such a
Oh,
moving situation. But if we believe that somehow she's watching, she would have been so overjoyed because her granddaughter and grandson both were very highly educated. Since we're speaking about women, I'll keep the focus on granddaughter, my mother, who then went on to read Tamil and became a PhD in
PhD.
Tamil and a great Tamil scholar. And
Fantastic.
so, ever since I was small, both my parents greatly emphasized the education. And I think because I was a female child, that was particularly important for them. The idea that I should be highly educated, as high as possible, the education should be, and I should be brought up to be independent.
Mhm.
Those were the values that were extremely close to my mother's heart, and she embodied those values. And although she was a great family woman and enriched my father's and my life enormously,
Mhm, mhm,
the fact is she was a strong, independent
mhm.
person
Yeah.
and a pillar of the family.
Mhm. That's the beauty of women, no matter if it's an Indian woman or an American woman or a Western woman, whoever, generally speaking, they don't have to just wear one hat. Women, we tend to wear multiple hats. You can be a full-fledged cook at home, take care of the family, cook multiple meals, but at the same time have a full-fledged profession also. When you're at work, you're just fully focused on work, and you'd never even guess that this woman can go back and go home and change the diapers and clean the garbage and do all these things. For women are just magical. They have magical minds. There is multiple processors running inside the machine, and she has not just two hands and not just 10 fingers, but she's got multiple hands like Durga Devi. I think that's one of the Durga Devi was one of the most endeared goddesses of Subramani Bharati, and I think he saw Durga in all the women, and he always said every woman is a Durga by herself, right?
Absolutely, yes. I completely agree with you about the incredible strength and power of women because I've seen that with my own eyes.
Mhm, mhm.
But may I also just put in a word for the equality there? Because women can do everything because they do and they have for many generations, but at the same time I think we've reached a point in the evolution of humanity where we need to understand that the only way we're going to go forward is by men and women sharing responsibilities equally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whether we're talking about bringing the new generation, bringing children, or getting the laws written, this is something that we have to do in cooperation, men with women, different nations
Yeah.
and ethnicities and religions with each other. We all need to work together So let's not relieve
I
men of
agree.
their
Yeah. Let's not
share of
give them a good life
responsibility.
all the time. Yeah, right. Let's not make them couch potatoes and let them not be watching Netflix all the time. So, Mira, 2021, if you look at this year's theme for Women's History Month, it's choose the challenges, a hashtag for this year's International Women's Day, or in general, Women's History Month. So many people interpret it in different ways. My take is that women should get out of their comfort zone and do something that they are not comfortable with, but at the same time that's very protective for themselves, protective for the community and around themselves. Uh, if I were to ask you the same question, what is your interpretation of that? And how if I had to ask your mother about it, how would she interpret it?
I think we would probably have very similar interpretations, which is not surprising. But I would say that that is an affirmation or a reaffirmation that women should be dreaming their lives, visualizing their lives in terms of what they hold close to their heart, what's important to them, and feel a freedom to pursue their dreams and their goals. So for me, it's about freedom. And I'm sure actually that my mother would answer it in the same way, that that ultimately is the goal: freedom of vision, freedom of imagination, and the freedom to realize oneself in one's chosen path in life. And
Mm.
that should be available to every human being. Ideally, that's the state that we would like to see happening.
That's a nice way of saying this. Basically, yeah, I know what you're saying. It's not just freedom around us, but it's freedom within us, freedom to express, freedom to do what we want to do, etc. That's a nice way.
Yeah, that's beautifully put, Sudha. I would definitely say that the inner freedom is the most
Yeah,
important
I
thing.
agree. I agree.
How do we think of ourselves? What can we imagine for ourselves? And what can we imagine for the world? What kind of world we want to live in? And I
Right.
guess we're back to Bharati again, because that was a typical character.
That's why I came. It's not out of freedom like what Bharati brought to us, gave to us,
Yes,
but it's also within ourselves. How do we want to feel ours? How do you
yes.
want to feel? It's Mira, you have been to different parts of the world. You were born in Canada. You were raised in the UK. You are now in the US. You've been to different parts, and you have worked. You have earned your degree in the United Kingdom, and you have also worked here. Uh, you have any challenges in particular that you have come across that you have overcome as a teen, as a child, as an adult, that how would you overcome it as a woman, as a girl, and any advice that you'd like to give younger girls as a Bharatiya's great granddaughter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're quite right. So, in terms of my experience, it's been incredibly broad internationally, and I have
Right.
lived
Yeah.
in,
It's
you know,
not
a number of
easy. It's
countries.
not at all easy. For me, I was just transported India comfortably with parents and then here comfortably, but then I don't have experience anywhere else. But then you have been all around the place, and I'm sure you had some quite a lot of I don't want to call it challenges, but different kind of environments that you had to deal with. I just wanted to see if you want to talk about it a bit and
Sure,
how did you deal with them?
definitely. Although I think actually mostly being in different environments is something that has helped me to confront challenges. So that is something that I would give as advice to anyone who's trying to get forward in their life now, is that it's excellent to seek out those opportunities, to pursue higher studies, to get a
Hmm.
chance to travel. There's no education like traveling, and especially if you can learn another language and be in another environment.
Okay.
And I think that definitely what I have discovered is that people are remarkably similar in their shared humanity in so many different places in the world. And it's possible to communicate and reach each other at that level. So for me, that's been a very fortifying thing and has given me a lot of strength. And I have, wonderful friends and colleagues, and have earned the respect of people that I respect all over the world. And it's a great thing in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the challenges, definitely the educational path that I chose,
Hmm.
and the level of career success that I've enjoyed in that educational path has brought some huge enormous challenges that I never could have foreseen when I started.
Mhm.
And it's nice to hear you talk about women entering the legal profession. And I think that is something we're seeing, of course, with women who are prominent and so on. But the fact of the matter remains that this profession and many others are not so welcoming to women once you get to the higher levels.
Oh, really?
So, you're able to, for example, you're able to study law, but to be able to get through and get to the level of becoming a professor or becoming a senior
Mm.
partner in a firm dealing with the top clients and so on, that is a much more difficult goal to reach.
Mhm. Oh.
And I really found throughout my educational career that I had faced, I now would call it discrimination. At the time, I would not have called it that,
Okay.
because at the time I was just trying to work through it.
So
And, now I realized
now
that,
you realize there is a term associated. You did not know. You had to wade your way through. Got it.
yeah,
Okay. Mm.
somehow you've got to overcome. And I've seen such situations in my life, even at the level of becoming a tenured professor. I've been tenured in 2 countries at 2 institutions. And in spite of that fact, I have had to deal with this situation of discrimination and struggle against it pretty much every step of the way.
Mm.
And my advice to people would be that in no way should one be deterred from pursuing one's goals and objectives on that account, but one has to develop a certain inner strength about that as
Okay.
well, and not expect that the world is going to necessarily be an easy place to navigate. And for each one of us that is going through this process, we're trying to make a sea change. And I firmly believe that we are going to be making the world a better place in the long run. But it's going to be um, a challenge every step of the way to do that. And that's what my experience has really shown me.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, I did not think there was be such an intense conversation at this point, but I can tell the challenges that you have gone through, especially navigating through so many different countries, so many universities, and laws. In fact, just talking about your profession, just yesterday there was an article on CNN that talked about doctors, female doctors, uh, going through tough times in their profession. That they say they can write a whole book about the challenges that they go through. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought about it. I thought life of others were tough, but who thought that the life of doctors would have been different from that? We female doctors are different from that of male doctors. I, and especially during the COVID times, I wonder what goes on. We don't know when we go to a clinic and get checked out. We don't know. We just want to see a good doctor. We don't know what happens behind the doors. But then I don't know. Each profession has something going on that is just such a black box to many of us. And
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the social environment that we live in, to put it really bluntly, it's one where people in power have a habit of taking advantage of those who they perceive as being less powerful. And this is the terrible thing, that at a certain level, our society is built on the subjugation of some people by others. And I think this is what humanity needs to overcome going forward, that this kind of relationship between two people, any two people, is completely unacceptable. It's not part of what we recognize as being human.
absolutely, absolutely, a person in power and a person who's just entering into a job or who's maybe a different race or lesser. I don't even know what it is. Especially women, we tend to be treated in a poorer light when we're just trying to take off and we're trying very hard to stay to take off in a career.
And
That's a good
and
point.
I think this is why, if I can add one more comment to that, I think this is why I personally would see education as being the key in the future. And I don't just mean education like at a university. That is one setting in which one can obtain
Mm,
education.
mm,
It's also perfectly possible to go through university and get advanced degrees and have no education.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, so that's why I'm saying, the world is a rich and wonderful place in terms of the opportunities it offers to meet other people, to travel, eventually once we get past the pandemic, to
Yeah.
learn languages, to read, to listen to
Mm.
music, and to learn about the lives of artists. All these things are so valuable because they help you to build an understanding of what the world is and not necessarily have preconceived notions then when you're dealing with other people. Ultimately, those notions just limit you as well as the other person. So we really want to outgrow that.
Absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. I mean, I was just thinking about maybe exchange programs, listen to other countries' music and stuff. And as you said, maybe read a new language. I think this is all very enriching, and it educates you. It gives a different perspective of the other part of the world, the other part of the other side of the world that the textbooks don't teach you, and they're not graded. But at the same time, it enriches you in other ways. Yeah, it's a good point. Final question for you, Mira. This is a question that I ask most women as the last question. If you're given unlimited power uh, to change humanity and change women, give more power to women. Okay, you girl, I'm giving you so much power. You can change the world to do so and so. What would it be? I kind of think I know what you're going to say, but let me see if my answer matches with yours.
Well, this is actually such a difficult question to answer because there are so many possible answers. And I'm curious to know what some of your other interviewees had to say.
Okay. Some of them, in fact, most of them said, I will. Most of them said, educating all the girls, giving free education to girls and women. That was most of the common answers, and empowering women. But then empowering is very subjective. Empowering could mean physical empowerment, it could be mental empowerment, strengthening, whatever. But to me, I would say education, and as you said, education the definition of education is very subjective. It could be a textual form education or well-rounded education or whatever. But what is your take on that?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to have anything original to say here because
No, that's fine. That's fine.
for me, the emphasis already is naturally on education. And so, yes, I definitely would emphasize that.
Okay.
And maybe be a little bit more ambitious in that and say not only that we should provide girls with access to education, but that we should emphasize the importance of striving for an education and make that a sought after value for a female in our society, which is how I was brought up. So I believe in that very strongly and encourage women to get educated with a view to building their independence and their confidence. And sadly, one of the other things I was thinking about when I reflected on your questions is that recently we see so much about the unsafe conditions in which women are living in so many parts of the world. And it just saddens me so deeply, to think of any woman becoming a victim in that way, whether at home or in the society at large. And so to me, that is the importance of the education. It's the independence. You don't have to live with someone else. You don't have to put yourself in a situation of exposure. You have the ability to stand on your own feet and the confidence.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yeah. Great. Any final thoughts, Mira? Would like to conclude this interview with?
Well, I just want to conclude actually by commending you. And I think that you will be one of the women that we should be celebrating as part of our
Oh no,
Women's Day.
not so much.
Absolutely, here in the Bay Area, because you yourself have such an interesting history, and you've started this wonderful program that you do. But then the initiative that you've taken to find interesting interviews from Sikil Gurucharan to myself to your own daughter, and help to create some dialogue around these issues. I think it's such a valuable contribution you're making. So let me conclude on that note that thank you, Sudha. Thank you for
Thank
this
you.
opportunity
You are
to.
one of the handpicked women I wanted to talk to in my show because you really add value to this interview series. If your mother were around, definitely she would have also added a lot of value.
Absolutely.
Bringing in Subramani Bharati's great granddaughter to my show, I cannot tell you how much of a value add this is to me, and how honored I am to have you on our show. Thank you very much, Mira, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. You too, Sudha.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.